celebration of his bar mitzvah, we call forward Harry Winton for the reading of the Maftir.
Baruch Adonai Varach. Baruch Adonai Varach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Toratzo. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. O Mikol Asher Yishava Alav Lasheker Veshilem Oto Verosho Vachamishitav Yosef Elav Leasher Hulo Itnenu Bayo Mashmatzo Vetashamo Lavia Leadonai Ayil Tamim Min Hatzon Berkecha Leasham Alakochen Vechiper Elav Akohen Lifnei Adonai Venislach Lo Alechat Miko Asher Yaseh Lishma Va Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Tamed V'chayei Olam Notzav Etochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Please rise for the singing and tying of the Sefer Torah.
May be seated. After all for this morning can be found on page 424.
Amzu Yatzarta Li Tehilati Yesaperu. Oh, my bad. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Beneviim Tovim Veratah Bedivreihem Anemarim Bemet. Baruch Atah Adonai Avocher Betorah Uve Moshe Avdo Uve Israel Amo Uve Nevi'ei Aemet Vasedek. Amzu Yatzarta Li Tehilati Yesaperu. ולא אותי קראת יעקב, כי הגעת בי ישראל. לא הבאת לי פעולותיך ובזבחיך לא כיבדתני, לא הבדתיך במנחה ולא חגתיך בעלבונה. לא קנית לי בכסף קנה וחלב זבחיך לא הראתני, אך העבדתני בחטאותיך, חגתני בעוונותיך. אנוכי מוחה פשעיך, למעני וחטאותיך לא אזכור. הזכירני נשבת יחד, ספר אתה למען תצדק. אביך חרישון חטא ומליסך פשובי, והלל שרי קודש ואתנה לחרם יעקב וישראל לגידופים. ואתה שמע יעקב עבדי וישראל בחרתי בו. כה אמר אדוני עושך ועוזרך מבטן יעזרך. אל תירא עבדי יעקב וישורון בחרתי בו. כי עצק מים על צמא ונוזלים על יבשה. אצוק רוחי על זרעך וברכתי על צאך. ושמחו בבין חציר כערבים על יבלי מים. יאמר אדוני אני וזה יקרא בשם יעקב, וזה יכתוב ידעו לאדוני, ובשם ישראל יכנה. כה אמר אדוני מלך ישראל וגאלו אדוני צבאות, אני ראשון ואני אחרון, ומבלעדי אין אלוהים, ומכמוני יקרא וגדך וערכך לי. משומי עמולם ואותיות ואשר תבואנה יגידו למה. אל תפחדו ואל תיראו, הלא מאז השמעתיך וכיגדתי ואתם הדי. היש אלוה מבלעדי ואין צור בידעתי. יוצרי פסל כולם צוחו וחמודיהם בל יועילו, וידיהם המה בל יראו ובל ידעו, למען יבשו מיצר ופסל נסך לבלתי הועיל. אין כל חבריו יבשו, וחרשים המה מאדם. יתקבצו כולם יעמדו, יפחדו יבשו יחד. חרש ברזל מהצד ופעל בפחם ובמקבות יצרהו ויפעליהו ברזו. כוחו גם רעב ואין כוח לשתה מים ויעף. חרש עצים נטע קו ויצרהו בסרד ויעשהו במקצועות במחוגה יצרהו ויעשהו כתבנית איש כתפארת אדם לשבת בית לכרת לו ארזים. ויקח תרזה ואלון ויאמץ לו בית יער נוטה אורן בגשם יגדל, והיה לאדם לבאר, ויקח מהם ויחם, אף יסיק, ויפל לחם, אף יפעל, וישתח, עשהו פסל, ויסקד למה, חציו שרף במו אש, על חציו בשר יאכל, יצלה שרי, וישבע, אף יחום, ויאמר, איך חמותי, ראיתי אור, ויוסה ריצו, לאל עשה, לפסלו, יסגד לו, וישתחו, ויתפלל אליו, ויאמר הצילני, כי אלי אתה. לא ידעו ולא יבונו, כי איתך מראות עיניהם מהשחיל ליבם, ולא ישיב על ליבו, ולא דת ולא תבונה לאמור, חציו שרפתי במו אש, ואף אפיתי על גחליו, לחם אצלה בשר, ואוכל ויתרו לטובה, אעשה לבול עץ, אסקוד רואה, אפר לב הוטל, יצרהו ולא הציל את נפשו, ולא יאמר הלא שקר בימיני, זכר עלי יעקב וישראל, כי עבדי אתה יצרתיך עבד לי, אתה ישראל לא תנשני, מחיתי כאב פשעך וחנן חטאותיך, שובי אלי כי גאלתך, רנו שמיים, כי עשה אדוני הריעו תחתיות ארץ, פיצחו הרים רינה יער וכל עץ בו, כי גאל אדוני יעקב ובישראל יתפאר. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam Sur Kol Ha'olamim Sadich Bechol Hadorot Ha'el Ne'eman Ha'omer Ve'aseh Ha'medaber U'mekayem Shechol Devarav Amed V'Sedek Ne'eman Atah Hu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'nemanim Davarecha Udavar Echad Midavarecha Achor Lo Yashuv Reikam Ki HaMelech Ne'eman V'Rechaman Atah Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el Ne'eman Bechol Davarecha Recham Al Tzion Ki Hivet Chayenu V'Aluvat Nefesh Toshiyah Bimhera Bayamenu Baruch Atah Adonai Meshamech Sion Bebanecha Samchenu Adonai Eloheinu Beliyahu Hanavi Avdecha Ubemelchot Beit David Meshachecha Bimhera Yavo Vayagil Libenu Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar Velo Inchalu Od Acharim Et Kevodo כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל נביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה, למנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת, על הכל Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach ubamarchim etach yitbarach simcha befei kol chai tamid leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen. Simen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simen tov. Yehelanu, 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 lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, lechol Yisrael.
Now I'd like to call upon Harry to read his Devar Torah.
Thank you for coming to my bar mitzvah. The Torah portion I read today was Vayikra from the third book of the Torah. In Vayikra, God calls to Moses from the Mishkan and tells him all about the laws of sacrifices. These include 5 different sacrifices. The first sacrifice is called the Olah, or the ascending offering. The second type of sacrifice is the Mincha, which is prepared with flour, olive oil, and different type of scents. The third sacrifice is the Shelamim, or a peace korban, which is essentially a barbecue. The last type of sacrifice mentioned was the sin offerings, and the Asham, or the guilt offering. This portion talks a lot about korbanot and how the Jewish people needed to make specific sacrifices. In my opinion, a sacrifice is a way of thanking God. However, thanking God you don't need to thank God by sacrificing an animal, like it was in historic times. It could be by saying prayers 2 times a day, or doing a mitzvah by donating money and time to a special cause in your community. I've chosen, as a part of my bar mitzvah experience, to participate in a funding, for sick kids. Thanking God relates to me because I really like to give back to my community, like hospitals and synagogues, which are both considered mitzvot in the Torah. Even though I do not connect so much to making prayers or making physical sacrifices, I do feel that it is important to put your heart and soul when you're thanking God. Having a bar mitzvah means that I can now fully participate in all Jewish mitzvot, like on Yom Kippur, I can now fast my older family members. Being able to have a bar mitzvah in these different times has taught me a lot. In some ways, it made it more special. I know I will always think back to this when I'm older. Lastly, I would like to thank everybody. Thank you for my parents for supporting me throughout my journey and signing me up for my bar mitzvah lessons. Thank you to my teacher, Leah, for teaching me all the things that I know today. Thank you to my sister for being supportive of me. Thank you to all my grandparents for keeping me excited about my bar mitzvah. And thank you to all my uncles, aunts, cousins, and friends for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed watching everybody online, and I know that I'm doing it in very strange times, but I am now bar mitzvah.
Mazel tov, mazel tov. I want to ask Harry to please return back to his parents. The celebration of a bar mitzvah is indeed a powerful one. It's interesting that for Harry on this morning that his Torah portion not only begins the third book of the Torah, but the naming not only of this third book, which is also taken from the very name of the Parsha itself, the word, Vayikra. Now the word Vayikra is interpreted in a number of different ways, but let's take the most simplest and I think the most direct meaning of the word, Harry. The word Vayikra means to be called. In fact, in the entire book of Vayikra, we find a series of things that are being called for the people of Israel to do, in particular in a ritual way. But the very beginning of the Torah portion and the book has God calling Moses. And the call is one that is very much felt, I believe, in Jewish tradition. Is not only found in every day of our lives, but for Harry, very much for you on this day of your life. There's an ancient rabbinic legend that says that every moment of every day in our lives, there is a voice that calls us. The voice that calls us, if we were to hear it clearly, it would be asking us, Are we doing the right things? Are we being the best that we can be? Are we achieving to what we can reach and perhaps a little bit beyond it? On this morning of your bar mitzvah, Harry, you are invited to join the millions and millions and tens of millions of other Jewish souls who have given their lives to turning their ears, to hearing that call. It is my prayer, and I know the prayer of all the people who love and care for you, that you'll be dedicating every day of your life to listening to that voice. So I'd like to ask you to stand along with your parents. Kindly rise. And mom and dad, you're going to repeat after me the bar mitzvah blessing. Baruch sheptarani me'ansho shel zeh shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Harry, give a hug and a kiss to your parents. Mazel tov. I'd like now to call upon Sandy Winton to please come forward to recite the prayer on behalf of universal peace. Following her will be Hannah Rosenbaum for a prayer on behalf of the State of Israel.
Baruch Hashem, please hear our prayer for peace. May the day come when war and bloodshed cease, and when a great peace will embrace the whole world. Then nation will not threaten nation, and mankind will not again know war. For all those who live on earth shall realize we have not come here to being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love. Compassionate God, we ask you to bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. Please fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you. I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it should not be ravaged by war. Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream. Let peace fill the earth as waters fill the sea. And let us say, Amen.
And Hannah Rosenbaum, on behalf of the prayer of the State of Israel.
אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך. ושלח אורך ואמתך לראשיה, שריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם אלוהינו ישועה, ועטרת ניצחון תיאטרם. ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ונאמר אמן.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and a Mazel Tov. It's nice to have people back in the building. I didn't start off wanting to be a YouTube star, so this is much more in my wheelhouse, as we would say. The Torah portion for this morning, that beginning, as I said, the third book of the Torah, the Sefer Vayikra, represents or presents for us, in a modern context, a great disconnect. But I want to pull the lens out a little bit and give you kind of a bird's eye macro view of an idea that emerges from it, just one idea. And that is, in the ancient world, it's not unusual that there were places of religious worship. In fact, when you look at the great empires and now archaeological remains of ancient Babylon, Mesopotamia, Egypt, we find that part and parcel with great administration and palaces are great religious centers. And this is by no means accidental, because religious life was a critical and important part of ancient human history, as it is of modern human history. And so what we read about in the Torah this morning, about the building of a religious ritual life of sacrifices and of a temple and all those other things, that's very much in keeping with the broad concept of how human societies and humans developed. Now, that having been said, there's a broad and very important distinction. Because in the ancient world, there was a king or an emperor or a pharaoh. That pharaoh was seen as God. And that Pharaoh, king, or emperor was in charge and the center of the religious life of the people. But the idea that we find presented to us in the Torah this morning is best summed up in the way the great Jewish philosopher, biblical commentator, Martin Buber described it as. Buber said that the Jewish or biblical attitude of religious life and of government is religious anarchy. In other words, there is no king represented in the book of Leviticus. There is no human being seen as a representative of God, put in the middle of the cultic worship. At the very center of everything that we read this morning, and at the very center of everything that we will read in successive mornings in the book of Leviticus and beyond, the thing that is at the center of the religious life of the ancient people of Israel, a radical and dramatic break from everything that existed before in the ancient world, the very center of it was the human being. Not the king, not the queen, not the priest, but me and you, the human. And that's why Buber said the Torah represents a kind of religious government anarchy. Now, for those of you who listened to last week, you know that I promised to give you a primer on the Israeli election. This is my fourth time doing it, so I'm a little exhausted. But I want to share with you that my introduction of governmental anarchy perhaps suits what we're going into in this next round of Israeli elections. But I want to share a little joke with you. The old joke goes that when you land in Israel, you actually discover that there are two time zones, the 17th century and the 21st century. And nothing, of course, could be truer than what we're about to walk into. So this morning, what I'd like to do, with the brief amount of time that's available to me, is not to give you a broad bird's-eye view of what the election issues are. You can go online and find all that much better written in the way that I could present it to you. What I think I'm going to do this morning is present to you a description of three characters to be found in the in the electoral race that's going to unfold in 3 days. And through these three individuals, you'll perhaps see with a lens of exactly what's happening and what could happen, and then we're going to wrap up with a question. So here goes. The first person I want to present to you is somebody you know very well. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu, better known as Bibi. Now, for people, it's a shocking idea actually. Most Israelis under the age of 25 have no idea of anyone else being the prime minister of the state of Israel except for Benjamin Netanyahu. In politics in general, there's a rule called the incumbency rule. The incumbent is the person who's already elected and sitting in the office. Incumbents have an enormous advantage over a challenger. Why is that? It is because voters generally prefer, as the expression goes, the devil they know versus the one they don't, unless the one they do know is so bad that the prospect of someone different they don't know is not nearly as bad as the person that they do know. And so, Bibi Netanyahu famously never does TV debates. He has been challenged over and over again, particularly in this latest round of elections. He refuses time and time again to do a debate because he understands, cunningly understands, the dynamic of being an incumbent. And that is, if he goes and sits in a debate with all of his challengers, then he no longer says that he is the only prime minister. He sets himself on equal stage with everyone else. The idea of Bibi Netanyahu and the history that he has, the criminal charges that are pending against him, his bizarre and weird alliances with all different kinds of people to keep political power, is part of the large story of Benjamin Netanyahu and his ability to retain control and to remain as the prime minister. Which leads me to my second character. His last name is Ben Gvir. Ben Gvir is these are interesting terms to use, but I'll use them anyway. A very right-wing person. He is what they call a kahanas. For those of you who may remember Jewish history from the 60s and 70s and 80s, the movement to free Soviet Jewry will well remember Meir Kahane. One of the devotees of Meir Kahane was a man named Baruch Goldstein, who murdered 29 Muslims while they were praying in the city of Hebron, in the area of the Cave of the Patriarchs. While the overwhelming majority of Israelis completely disavow themselves from anything associated with Kahane and Baruch Goldstein and his murderous actions, like every society, Israel has its crazies too. And there is a small fragment of Israeli society that worship not only Kahane, but the actions of Baruch Goldstein. This one person, Meir Ben Gvir is one of those people. Benjamin Netanyahu, the current sitting prime minister of the state of Israel, has made, as it has been described in the Israeli media over and over again, an unholy alliance with that wing of extremist, hard-right, racist ideology, messianic ideology, which paints for us the broader picture of where Israeli politics are today. Typically, in the Western world, in the United States, Canada, and in Europe, when we look at the political world, we generally break it down into two fractions. We say that there is a left wing and that there is a right wing. But in Israel, that's not so true. The overwhelming majority of sentiment what we find in Israel today, and any quick look at the surveys of political sentiment in Israel in terms of their voting habits will make this abundantly clear, is that there is very little of a left wing left in Israel. Generally, what we see here is that a large majority of Israelis are what we would call right wing. And this is not for a large discussion today, because why that's the case is a big discussion. But allow me to put it in front of you like this. The broad movement of the Israeli population from having somewhat of an equal divide between left and right wing to an overwhelming right-leaning voting public is a result of the failure of the Oslo Accords and the Second Intifada. It reverberates as a traumatic episode in the Israeli public, even to this day, some 15, 18 years later. And so Israelis, first and foremost, want stability, security, protection. And that's why they vote a little bit to the right. And so Bibi is looking to harden up his right-wing coalition of ultra-Orthodox parties, yes, even some of these crazy fringe Kahane followers, in order to maintain his grip on power. The third person I want to talk about this morning is a fascinating person. You probably have heard him here and there. His English is actually very, very good. He's the son of a former Israeli politician and cabinet minister. His name is Tommy Lapid. That was his father. His name is Yair Lapid. He is, if there is anything along the lines of a centrist Israeli politic, that is where Yair Lapid is to be found. That is exactly where his policies are situated. He wants to disencumber the government from its religious connections with the ultra-Orthodox. He wants to focus the government on building affordable housing. He wants the educational network within the country focused on more modern techniques of teaching. In short, his tagline for his party called Yesh Atid, meaning there is a future, is called that he wants a memshla shfuya. He wants a government that is sound and reasonable, not a prime minister that is being dogged by criminal investigations, and all other bizarre machinations. And Lapid is, like I said to you before, if there is a central politic to be found in Israel, you would do well to follow his tweets and listen to him talk, because that is, and if the polls are accurate, which is my last point, if the polls are accurate, he's going to land somewhere along the lines of 19 to 22 mandates or seats in the Knesset, which will be second to only the Likud party headed by the current Israeli Prime Minister. It is not a small thing at all. My last point for this morning. You can look at the polls today, and it shows that no one single coalition is going to get to 61. It's a frightening idea that there could be a set of fifth elections within the next year. But the other thing that is seldom discussed, but important in particular now for this election, is that while there are 10% of the Israeli population that are undecided as to what they want to do, one famous Israeli statistician and political strategist, his name is Yisrael Becher, in the Israeli news this past week, he said, while that number is 10%, remember that half of that 10% will not come to vote. When they're called upon by the survey people, they say they don't know, but they don't show up actually to the polls and vote. He said the thing to pay attention to is the other 5%. Because the other 5%, every political strategist throughout the world knows that people in the last 5 days before an election, if they still don't know who they're voting for, they're voting for change. And he says that's the big question mark in front of the Israeli election to unfold in a few days for us now. Some people say that we should hope that whatever happens in the election, it should result in a stable, long-serving government. That's not my feeling or my wish. My wish is that whatever comes out of the election, there should be a government that represents the kinds of values that the country is built on and the country dreams for. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
We're on the live stream. Here. Okay. Harry, this is for you.
First, I'd like to thank all who have joined us from near and far to celebrate Harry's bar mitzvah. While we're unable to celebrate with you in the way we would have preferred, your virtual presence today means so much to us. To my mom and dad, for whom I know Harry's bar mitzvah is one of the proudest moments of their lives, thank you for your unconditional love and support. The time we spent together as a family is cherished. I am so grateful that you and Harry have such a strong bond, and that you continue to create wonderful memories which Harry will carry with him wherever he goes. My relationship with my grandparents was such an important part of my life, and it means so much to me that Harry views his relationship with his bubby and his papa in precisely the same way. To Hannah, Harry's one and only Tafa, I love when I walk into Harry's room to kick him off his phone and he tells me that he's talking to you. Harry cherishes your conversations, and in particular your stories about Frank and your family in Israel. You have always had a spiritual connection with Harry unlike anyone else, and Harry is so lucky to have you in his life. To Larry, Jill, Adam, Shane, Debbie, Gil, Max, Danielle, and Charlie, Harry could not have asked for a better group of aunts, uncles, and cousins. Just the mention of your names puts a smile on Harry's face, and his excitement when he gets to spend time with you makes it obvious how much he loves you. To Emma, my baby girl, your relationship with Harry will likely be the longest relationship of your life. You're a loving and protective sister, and Harry is so lucky to have you. Watching you and Harry grow up together and seeing your relationship flourish has been incredible. I know that no matter where life takes you, your connection with each other will never be broken. While heated disagreements between brother and sister are inevitable, they're completely overshadowed by the much more frequent sound of your joyful laughter together, which is always the best part of my day. To Shelley, the love of my life, your relationship with Harry never fails to amaze me. You have an understanding of Harry unlike anybody else, and are unequaled in the impact you've had in making Harry the person he is today. You are Harry's constant, and your unwavering love, guidance, and support for Harry in every area of his life leaves me in awe. This includes the incredible work you've done in organizing and making this day so special for Harry. I'm not sure how you keep it all together, and I can't help but constantly remind myself how lucky I am to be able to share my life with you. And finally, to Harry. I don't think I could ever properly put how I feel about you into words, other than to say that my love for you has no end. You are intelligent, hardworking, and take great pride and responsibility in everything you do. You have an incredibly quick wit and sense of humor which brings a smile and laughter to everyone around you. You're an exceptionally caring and loyal friend, a talented athlete, a stellar student, and a wonderful son, brother, grandson, and cousin. What makes you so special, however, is the kindness and the empathy you bring to every aspect of your life. It's remarkable how deeply you care about the people in your life. You inspire me and everyone around you to be a better person. I can't wait to see what the rest of your life has in store. Mazel tov, young man. I love you.
Okay, so Harry, I don't know where to start, so I'll start at the beginning. You came into the world in a rush, ahead of your time, and with a bang. I've had the pleasure of being next to you for this first phase of the journey of your life, which brings you to today, your bar mitzvah. Everyone knows that you have a wicked sense of humor, which you inherited from your father, not from me. They also know that you are kind, smart, hardworking, empathetic, passionate, and a leader. I've even had a teacher refer to you as worldly. You amaze and inspire me every day, whether it be listening to your business presentation to Daddy and me, reading something you've written for school, watching you with your sister or cousins, seeing you play baseball, tennis, or hockey, being around you and Daddy, talking and talking and talking about sports or some other current event discussion. The same things come to mind. Wow, he's such a thoughtful, complex person who just brightens up the room. Some days it's hard to believe that you're only 12, well, almost 13, because you are so insightful and empathetic in your actions and reactions. Being around you is calming. Your empathy for others is what I admire most about you. It is obvious how much you love your sister, and even though you fight a lot, I know you have each other's backs. You and Emma's relationship is the most important one you're going to have for the rest of your life. So continue to take care of each other. Harry, I'm so proud of the young man that you've become and can't wait to see what you tackle next. Leah, we wanted to thank you for preparing Harry for today. He was very sad after your last session because he was going to miss the lessons. There was always chat, he said. To the cantor and the rabbi, thank you for your support and for creating a community for Harry and his peers who are also celebrating this year. I want to thank everyone from far and near who have joined us on the live stream. One nice thing about a virtual simcha is that people can join you from anywhere. I'm grateful to be able to share this day with my family in Israel because of that. While we're lucky to have our parents, Larry, Jill, Adam, and Shane, and Harry's best friends, Adam and Adam, here, it's difficult being apart from my sister, Debbie, Gil, Max, Danielle, and Charlie today. It's been a year and a half since we've all been together, and days like today make me long for when we can be together next. Sandy and David, thank you for being such wonderful grandparents to both the kids. Harry's bond with you is clear. Your relationship is special, and I know he cherishes it. I love you both very much. Mom, slow down. Mom, I didn't know how hard a job you had until I had kids, and you had to do it by yourself for many years. I love you so much and am grateful for the bond you have with both my children. Hearing you and Harry talking and laughing over the phone without my prompting him to call you warms my heart. You teach him many lessons that will serve him well throughout his life. Daddy would be so proud of Harry. I really believe that Daddy's spirit lives in Harry's empathy and kindness. Emma, you are my angel. I'm so proud of who you are. You tackle life head on. You love your family so much and have special ways of making us each feel important. Throughout COVID, you've made every occasion special with your thoughtful gifts and decorations, scavenger hunt for Harry's birthday, and baking concoctions. You are the first to protect your family. You are a loving sister when you're not fighting with Harry. I've caught many moments of the two of you building forts, playing online, and goofing around this past year, which warms my heart. I'm excited to continue to watch you grow into a strong, confident young woman. Finally, last but not least, Paul, I can't believe that this day is here. We've been through so much as a couple and as a family. If this last year has reinforced anything for me, it's that we make a great team. You're an amazing father, husband, son, and friend. For today, I'll focus on you as a father. Our two children are testaments to what that role of father means to you. I hope that Harry continues to learn and grow from your guidance and support. You're the #1 cheerleader for Team Winton. You support him in everything he wants to do and have always encouraged him to try new things. You teach him and guide him through challenges and everyday moments. Your priority is his and Emma's well-being and happiness. I can see every day how important your relationship with them is. Most importantly, you're teaching them love, forgiveness, patience, and what it means to be part of a family. I love you more than I can express. Harry, we love you, and we are so proud of you. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Mazel tov, Harry!